Hey there, my name is Jeroen, welcome to Abstract, and today I want to talk to you about feasibility. Not sure why I did. So, most of you are founders or working closely with founders, and a question that pops up frequently there is this a good idea? It's a very relevant question, but what actually is a good idea? Let's say a good idea is an idea that is likely to succeed, and that we would like to find out whether the idea has this potential. How could we check that? Well, around a couple of years ago, IDEO released this model here. You might have seen this before. I often see it applied in a very superficial way, and today I want to run you through it and zoom in on feasibility and tell you how you can minimize some risk. So, look at the model! Okay, we see three things. It says feasible, desirable and viable. And then in the middle it says goal. So if you have all three, you reach your goal. That's basically what they say. But feasible, desirable and viable might sound a bit vague. So what actually do we mean with those words? You should consider those words prompts for questions to ask yourself. Feasibility is all about the question, can your team build it? Desirability is all about, are there people that want your solution? And viability is all about, can you build a profitable business around this? Do you have a sustainable business model? Now, today I'm going to unpack feasibility for you, give a couple of examples on mistakes you can make, and broaden your mindset on how you can conceptualize feasibility. Ooh. So to repeat the question of feasibility, can you build it? Brings me to a nice story. 2 years ago, I was coaching a startup that had an idea for a new travel app. And they had some new UX insight on how it would be much better than the existing apps, and they built a mock-up of it with nice designs, and they tested that with various customers. The customers responded very positively. They had one problem. Their team did not have a developer that could build the app. And when they tried to add a developer to their founding team, they were not able to do so, plus they were not able to lend capital to hire developers. In the end, they were not able to realize this solution. I believe that the solution was feasible by some people that would have the capabilities, but this team was not able to build a solution. And very often I see the question phrased around, can it be built? And for me, it is not very relevant. Can you do space travel? Well, with Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, we have seen that actually, and not forget about Richard Branson, that it is possible. If I have a startup idea and I point at those people, I say, hey, they are able to do it because they have a lot of people and cash. I am not able to do it. So make sure that you are not trying to generalize too much, but talk about what your team can do. So one of the things that you can do to de-risk feasibility is prototyping. And the great thing about prototyping is that you can do it in your garage. Well, not that I have a garage, I live in Amsterdam, a garage is way too expensive for me, but bear with me with the idea of a garage. It is nice that you can do prototyping in your garage. However, the bad thing about prototyping is that you can do it in your garage, because your garage is such a different context than what your customer will be using in. I did an innovation project for a big beer brand, and they have all these small fridges, and they wanted to keep track on the beers that were inside. So with a talented team, we developed a computer vision model to actually measure that. You see some pictures here. And we showed it to them, and they were quite happy with the result. So we have developed some proof that it can be done by us, but this was just one very hacky prototype. You could see the wires running out of the Raspberry Pis and Arduinos. So what did we prove? That it can be done on a small scale, but we did not prove that it can be done on a large scale, let alone implement it in an organization on a large scale. Implementation in large organizations is very difficult because large organizations have a lot of people with layers of hierarchy and a lot of people that need to agree with something. So make sure that you understand that the proof of concept on one hand does not imply scale or implementation per se. That will be another process of feasibility checking. So until now I have talked a lot about solutions and making your solutions feasible and successful. However, and now is the big feat, it's not only about your solution. In the startup course that I teach, which basically is a pre-incubator. So students, they start with a very, very raw idea and we try to make it successful. They had an idea to fight against plastic pollution. And here we go, they wanted to do that with soap and shampoo in a can. Cans are much better recycled, plus there will be a new law in the Netherlands that will force people to recycle due to a deposit. They saw that as an opportunity. Very soon they were actually able to prototype it like this. So you can see they use regular soda cans, they 3D printed the cap on top and they repurposed a pump dispenser from an old soap bottle. And they handed this out to customers and the reactions were actually quite positive. So this is good prototyping on a small scale. But then they wanted to scale up. They wanted to not do all these things manually and they needed to start doing their supply chain. Now they talked to a lot of different suppliers, but not everyone wanted to get their hands on it. Putting shampoo in soda cans, that is something new, not for everyone. So you need to find some supplier that wants to be experimental with you, if you know what I mean. Furthermore, they had constraints that you have if you do physical products, such as minimum order quantities. They didn't have cash lying around for 50,000 units as a minimum order quantity. So they were forced to find someone or a supplier that was able to do so. Feasibility is not only about your solution. It is also about being able to set up your supply chain or set up the system that will generate your product. If you think back about the travel app team, they needed a system that produced the app. Now the system being a developer or the system being in a supply chain integrating soap producers, can producers and manufacturers of those things. They are inherently different things. But on a conceptual level, more abstract, it's the mechanism that generates your solution. And you should be able to produce both, especially if you want to scale. The last thing about feasibility is very often I see it treated as a boolean, a binary value of either yes it's feasible or no it's not feasible. And I think that will be not useful for you. It's not useful. What would be more useful is to treat feasibility as a skill. A feasibility from a low end to a high end. How much proof do we have that this is feasible? Maybe you have a sketch or maybe you see other people do it. How much proof can you generate? Every time you move to the right on this scale, you have generated more proof that it is feasible. Therewith, de-risking your startup idea on the feasibility aspect. And for example, having a hacky prototype or a standalone prototype, maybe an implemented prototype, that's very convincing evidence if you ask me. So treat it as a skill. Have discussions with your founding team on where do you think we are in terms of feasibility? Which hurdles do we see ahead in terms of scaling and in terms of implementation with our clients? So print this out, put it somewhere in your boardroom or your team Slack to have a brief discussion about feasibility, and just don't do this once. Sometimes I see that people want to check feasibility off like, yes, it's off the list, and then the next 3 years we don't need to reconsider it. And obviously, if I say it as such, it is not a good idea, but you will be surprised how often people forget to take a step back and to look at what is it that we have at hand right now. Are we still doing the right things? So that is what I wanted to talk about, feasibility. And now that you have that, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to my newsletter on getabstract.substack.com. See you around. Till next time. Goodbye.